All right, so my name is Jan Steen. I'm a community vitality specialist with K-State Research and Extension, and I work with a program called the Kansas Community Empowerment Program. It was formerly known as the Kansas Pride Program. Also, I work with community assessments like First Impressions, and I also work with organizations and communities on finding grant funding. So if you have any projects that you're working on, that's a free service that Extension offers. But we're going to be talking about First Impressions today. And I want to thank Monica for helping with this throughout the last several months in coordinating a meeting place and the visits and also the meal and the presentation today. So let me go ahead and start the slideshow. I'm going to share my screen. And can all of you see that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. And did it pop up for you to say that it was recording?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. All right, we are ready to go then. So let me explain the First Impressions program for those of you that are kind of new in the room there. First Impressions is a lot like a secret shopper program. It's a community assessment that brings in people from outside of your community. And it gives your community a look through the eyes of somebody who might want to live there, be a tourist there, or even start a business there. And people go and visit a partnered community, and they don't go and announce why they're there. They kind of look at things like restaurants and city services and parks and housing and medical services and a wide variety of things. And we train them on what to look for during the visit. We give them a blank report to fill out, and then we collect those reports once they've done the visit, compile them together, take pictures of those things that they saw, and make this presentation. So with this presentation, it's up to you to decide if there are things that you want to preserve in the community that have been identified as great things, maybe things that could use some improvement, or create things that don't exist already. And that's basically what the First Impressions program is. Now, how it came about was Goodland actually signed up for the program initially. And when a community signs up for this visit, we try to match them with another community of similar size within about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And that's so the visitors don't really have a good feeling of the community. They haven't been there many times, like to basketball games and football games or events. And in this case, Goodland is about 2.5 hours away. And even though that's a little bit more distant than we would normally match, the size of the communities worked out well, and everybody was open to that match. So we trained the volunteer visitors. 8 people from Goodland came to town between mid-June and late August, and we're presenting those results by Zoom today. And then you can use those results however you see fit. I will say I'm just the messenger, so if you don't agree with an observation that you see here today, be curious, ask yourself why a visitor might see things this way. Is that observation worth considering? And if so, is there anything you can do to change the perception? Again, you're going to be hearing from people who have not visited before or don't have a lot of experience in town before. So you can evaluate maybe your successes for community and economic development that are public facing, and also maybe set those priorities and goals for next steps. If you do decide that you would like to work on some of the issues maybe that are presented in this report, if there's anything worth addressing, then look at those as opportunities. When you look at those as problems, when you're doing asset-based community development, looking for resources in the community and people and other assets to get involved. When you look at those as opportunities, those conversations tend to move forward a little bit further than if you look at them as problems. And just go through some general rural Kansas, rural America information here before we get into the data and the actual report results. We work with researchers across the United States through other land-grant universities. Ben Winchester has come to Kansas several times to present about rural issues, and also has talked to us on our First Friday e-calls, if some of you are familiar with those. And he has some different things to think about here. That rural is changing and not dying. We sometimes hear of brain drain, but in his research, he's found that 30 to 49-year-olds are moving to rural areas. It's considered a new trend, but it's actually been happening since the 70s. As people are looking for a change in life, they're looking maybe to start a business or take over a business or move close to family who might need some assistance as they get older. And people look at a number of places before they move to a rural community. And it's not necessarily the middle of nowhere, as some people say. You might live in one place, work in another, or even recreate in another. So it could be considered the middle of everywhere. And a job is not in the top 10 reasons of people looking to move to a rural community. It's a simpler pace of life, safety and security, affordable housing, recreation, and good schools. And especially with the internet today, people can work for anywhere and live anywhere. So if you do have good internet access, it's a good opportunity to attract people to town. You might have heard also that in small towns, everybody knows each other or everybody knows each other's business. That's not necessarily the case. In Ben's research, he's found that sometimes people move to a community and they don't know what's going on. They don't know what types of events or civic organizations there are in the community. So communities are starting to get to know each other dinners, newcomers meals, where people who are new to town within the last year or 6 months or so are invited to a dinner with other residents and representatives from the city council, the churches, the school, civic organizations to hear about things that are happening in the community and how to get involved. And if you're facing a population decline issue, it can be a challenge with housing, but it is doable by bringing a few people to town every year. We'll also talk about customer service here, and we can be our own worst enemies. I don't see that as much in this report. It sounds like there are some places in town that are really promoting things to do in the community, but if you're coming to town, you go to a gas station or a restaurant and you ask, what is there to do around here? And you're told nothing, keep on driving. That could be an issue. Those are the first people you see when you come to town. Is that going to be inviting? Maybe have some kind of paper flyer in those businesses that they can hand out to tell people about things that are going on. And if you do get new people to town or people considering living in town, don't say you have to live here 20 years to be an insider, or we tried that 30 years ago, it didn't work. They're bringing new ideas and bringing a willingness to maybe be involved in the community. Finally, Ben talks a little bit about housing. In his research, 75% of rural homeowners are baby boomers and older. 30% of those are over 75. So housing is going to be freed up as baby boomers retire and move closer to medical services or to family that might live outside of the city or outside of the state. So rural communities really should look at maybe retirement housing, not necessarily nursing facilities, but something that's maintenance free to retain some of that senior population. Ben's information, his presentations that we've had and we've hosted him for can be found on our First Friday e-call page. And as I'm going to be uploading this presentation slide deck to our website, you can go ahead and click on this link if you're interested once that comes online. Okay, so now we're into the census data, and some of this is pulled from the 2020 census. And some of it's pulled from the American Community Survey from census.gov as an estimate. I will say that some communities, when we present these numbers, we'll say a little bit later in the presentation, oh, we don't think we have those housing numbers. We don't have as many vacant houses as the census says. Maybe our population hasn't declined as much as the census is indicating. And what I say to that is, yes, I am presenting these numbers, but these are the public facing numbers from the government. So if there's a business looking to locate to town, this is going to be one of their first sources of information, is looking at these numbers for a customer base, looking at these numbers for a potential workforce. So there may be a way for you to change your narrative on a city website or through your EcoDevo Chamber of Commerce websites if you find any information on here that might not be 100% accurate to what you're seeing locally. So between 2010 and 2020, The census shows that you had about a 6.05% drop in population. You're at 5,788 compared to 6,161 in 2010. The median household income is about $54,000 compared to $61,000 in the state of Kansas. High school or GED equivalent is about 77.2% compared to 91.4% in the state of Kansas. And for residents 25 or older, 20% have at least a bachelor's degree, and that's compared to 33.9% in the state of Kansas. Median age is about 32.6, and persons 65 or over is about 13.9. And moved since the last year, since the visit was in 2022. This is 2021 numbers between 21 and 22. These are people who might have moved into the community, people who might have moved out of the community, people who might have moved within the community, maybe from an apartment to a house or from one apartment to a duplex. It's 7.7%. The census website says that's a plus or minus 10% margin of error, so it could be 0. It could be a little bit higher than that, but that's compared to 15.1 in the state of Kansas. You have a 9.2% poverty rate compared to 11.7 in the state of Kansas. And you're pretty evenly split between Hispanic and white population, and then a small number of 2 or more races reporting. That was also collected from the census website. Right, any questions about any of those numbers before we move on to the observations? No, okay. So the first thing we ask visitors to do before they come to town is we ask them to get online and look for information about the community you're going to visit. Look at their social media, look at their city website, their school websites, anything that is official that is information about the city. You can look at this on your phone, because a lot of people, once they start to get on the road, that's how they're going to find information. But look at it on your computer as well. See how easy it is to navigate the website, but also see how accurate the information is. You're going to be looking at things that you find on the website and then seeing if some of those match. So if the Chamber of Commerce website lists several businesses that you're interested in going to, but they don't exist once you get to town, that means maybe the site hasn't been updated on a regular basis, just as an example. So for this, visitors said that they saw the City of Ulysses official website was one of the first things to come up in a Google search for most people. They like the site. They said it's colorful. It has a nice banner and a city directory, making it easy to find information. And remember, again, this is from June to August of last year, so the website may have changed since then. They did try to use the search box in the top right of the page, and they tested it, but they couldn't find any results when they were entering keywords. So they thought that might be a useful feature, but they weren't sure if it was working at the time of their visits to the sites. And also the events and meetings calendars, they thought might be a useful feature, but whenever they clicked on anything, all of the entries were blank. So there was no information when they went to the site. There was a lot of useful information online, though, about the city, and it reflected what was seen during their visits. So it was accurate and updated. The Chamber of Commerce website was for the city and the county. It seemed to be one in the same. They found a link to the site on the city's webpage. That's how most of them got there. They thought the Chamber website was a little plain and could use some graphics, but otherwise the information was there that they needed. For Facebook, the city has an official Facebook page. That was one of the first search results that they found as well. It has about 1.4 thousand likes and about 1,500 followers. There's also a Facebook generated page about things to do in town, and that was also found by visitors. Facebook has a feature where any geographic location, they will automatically generate a page and populate it with things that they feel are in the nearby area. So in this case, if you go to that Facebook generated page, you will find information about Black Mesa State Park, Cedar Bluff State Park, and the Dodge City Raceway. All right, so the next thing, those were the two, this is the first thing there was online. This is the 5-minute impression. These are the only two things we ask that people do in order. Everything else in this report, they could have done at any point during their visit in town. This is the first 5-minute impression. This is driving your car through town, through the major entrances and exits. Don't get out, but give your first impression of what you think the city is going to be like as you're driving through. So first of all, visitors loved the view from the south coming into town. The Ulysses Grant County billboard was easily noticed. They said it was a clean and attractive community on their drive-through. It appears there's a lot of community pride in town. They really thought that Pioneer Electric was a positive observation, positive force in the community. Houses and lots were well kept. The city was fairly organized. And they liked the flowers at 160 in Maine. And also they thought the corners at Missouri and Oklahoma were nice. The signage at the Civic Center was great. Directional signage was good to see and was commented by some. I believe some didn't notice it right off the bat, but most did. Westbound and northbound signage was great. And they also noticed the stone signs that were at major entrances, thought they were well done. And they also saw the veteran signs. As they were coming in from the south, they did feel that some felt that the south entrance was a little bit rough. There wasn't really a specific flow to how businesses were located outside of town, so maybe not a retail district specifically. They felt that the city was developed around the two highways and was a little bit broken up. Some of the smaller homes gave it an industrial feel, and the Tiger Country signs were faded as they encountered those. They said there were a lot of signs indicating attractions, but maybe too many because it was hard to read them as they were driving. There were so many. They did like the digital sign. But for people who were stopping at the light, they might have had a better chance to read the sign. It might have been too small for the people to read while driving, some of the lettering in the sign itself. Eastbound signage was lacking. They thought some noted the directional signage. Others indicated there wasn't a lot, or it was hard to see or hard to read. And some people felt lost trying to find the football field in high school when they were coming in from the west. But they said coming in from the east, there was a lot of adequate signage. They had no problem locating the high school or the football field. For downtown, we say get out of your car, walk up and down, go visit some businesses. The visitors thought that the directional signage downtown was of good quality and it was very helpful. Pedestrians thought that the walkability of the city was really good, especially in the downtown area. Nice variety of stores, with most being only 1 story high. It gave it a cleaner, dressier appearance. There was appropriate signage on the storefronts. During the visit, this was last year, they did notice that there was some light pole construction or maintenance happening on Main Street. And a little bit later, that'll mention that it was a little bit hard to get around that in some cases, but I'm sure that's done by now because that was quite a while ago. They did note if you're walking downtown, there was no countdown lights for crosswalks on the signs or poles, so it may be difficult to get across the street in some instances. And Main Street seemed a little narrow in spots for someone who indicated there was congestion, but acknowledged that there was that work on the light poles happening. For some, it was an ordinary Main Street, nothing really popped out. Some were also surprised that several businesses were closed during their visit on a Wednesday afternoon. They thought planning their visit in the middle of the week might have had a better opportunity for some of those to be open. And some felt there wasn't much merchandise variety in the shops. Maybe there were more service oriented industries, or maybe some of the businesses were similar, so not much merchandise. But that was only observed by some of the visitors. And some of those businesses observed with clothing stores, movie theater, drugstore, financial services, those types of things, insurance, real estate, and an art collective. Nice setup and friendly staff at the art antique store. Quite a few Mexican restaurants. business district reflects the community's Hispanic culture, and the coffee shop, Eco Devo office, and consignment shop were well noted, and the economic development office, chamber office, they noted had good signage. They also said the customer service at the Eco Devo chamber was good. They were greeted well. The fair and museum were mentioned when asking about things to do in town, and a brochure for the Lower Cimarron Springs was given out to people who asked. Friendly staff at Tiger Nutrition, friendly customer service at Main Artery. Everyone was welcome that people encountered downtown. There were no negative interactions to speak of. La Estrella service was great, and the consignment store staff was very helpful when asked for information about the community. So if you're going to spend time downtown, what kind of amenities are there for you, like bathrooms, Wi-Fi access if you maybe don't have good cell coverage if you're from out of town. There were benches on either side of the street. Some trash cans were observed, and some of those were near the benches, so very convenient. I would say most people mentioned they did not see any public Wi-Fi access downtown. And parks had restrooms if people needed them while in town, so those weren't too far away. They liked the brick areas between some buildings. They thought that looked nice. Other areas between buildings maybe looked a little neglected. There was an interesting area observed with a fancy street light between a couple of buildings with some sort of cauldron or fire pit, they assumed. Is that what that is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. They were glad to see concrete work being done in main areas. Parking was good, lots of available spaces, easy to walk to businesses from those parking spots. Some indicated landscaping was nice. Others noted there really weren't any live plants downtown to contribute to the landscaping. And they understood that a little bit later because of the drier climate down south. Maybe more of that was grass landscaping instead of trees and bushes and flowers. They did like the banners on the poles downtown. They thought that was a nice touch and welcoming to people. Other retail areas, they did note some of the shopping areas along Highway 60, and they felt that the building and grounds of those businesses were nicely done. People were taking care of those facilities. Ace Hardware and another lumber yard were observed off of Main Street, and they did see gas stations on Colorado. For the industrial areas, commercial areas of town, they felt that the area off of Stubbs Road out east was an industrial area, though it was not well marked, so they weren't sure if that's officially what it was. There was an area on the west side of town that could accommodate building or expansion, but some felt that the industrial areas were tightly packed with little room for potential expansion in the areas that they currently existed. Highway 160 has a majority of the commercial areas and a variety of businesses from agriculture to electric and hardware. But they did note again, along with that smaller housing earlier, that kind of gives the community an industrial feel. We asked them to do that while they're in town, to look at that industrial park or commercial area. It's not how a business is going to find if there's land in town to expand on. That's going to be done through the Chamber of Commerce, but since they were there, we thought, go ahead and take a look. Healthcare, the hospital was observed by all visitors. The hospital was well marked. The building and grounds were well maintained. It was in a central location. It looked modern and fairly large. The emergency room was easy to spot right there in the front of the building and easy access. The health department was noted, but it was not as well marked. Other facilities were found, such as a dentist, a dermatologist, a hearing specialist, good variety and availability of different types of medical services for people living in town. The variety and number of those services was a real asset to the community. Signage for some health services really didn't stand out for some visitors, but it was seen. They said that the assisted living and nursing facilities on the east side of town along Missouri appeared to have many residents. They were nice. The grounds were well kept. The buildings were well kept, and it was close to the elementary school. And the layout of the buildings at the assisted living facility was appreciated. They thought it would be easy to get around those facilities, easy to access those facilities. Now we're going to talk about housing. For what they saw of the houses and the properties in town, they said they were in good condition. Quite a bit of housing is on the small size. They didn't see much for sale in the community. While they were in there driving around in person, they didn't see a lot of for sale signs at that time. And they didn't see a lot online, but they said what they did find online seemed to be affordable and appeared easy to access by multiple income levels. So it would be appealing to people of different levels of income there. Small houses, or some houses, sorry, not small, some houses built in the last several years on the outskirts of the community were found. Some vacant lots may be available west of the high school area, but they weren't sure if that was available for construction. They did say some mobile homes and lower income housing on the south side of the town was not as well kept, but they do feel that code enforcement is evident in the city due to rundown properties being not that prevalent as it is in other communities in western Kansas. So that's a plus. Apartments and lots of duplexes were noted by visitors for rent. Now, I say by visitors, it could be, it's some visitors, it's not all visitors noted that, as we'll see later in the report. Housing authority was found. Some noted rental signs at the apartment complexes. Others did not see those rental signs, so they weren't sure if there was anything available or not. Felt that there were a lot of rental properties for the size of the community, and those were kind of scattered all over town, so not in one specific area. And again, here's some data from the U.S. Census, from the Census 2020 data, as well as census.gov quick facts. They say in town there are 1,896 occupied housing units. 60.8% of those are owner occupied, 12.3% are vacant houses, and the rest would be renter occupied. The average household size, whether they are renting or owning the house, is 2.9. And then this is important if you're looking to get information out to people digitally. Households without a computer, of all the occupied houses in town, about 6.6% of those houses do not have a computer, smartphone, tablet, or other wireless device. And about 10.2% of households either don't have internet at all or don't have broadband internet. So they may have dial-up or slower internet like a DSL. And travel time to jobs right now average for people who live in town about 23.4 minutes compared to the rest of the state, which is 19.6.
That's way off.
Is it way off? Okay.
I mean, I'm living out in the country by the county line, and I get down to my job in 15.
And I think people work in garden maybe skew that.
Yeah, that's true. There's people working out of town.
Yeah. So Garden City, you're saying could be skewing that a little bit.
Maybe I don't know, it works out.
Around here,
Yeah, it's still not 24 minutes.
I'm like 3.4 minutes.
I run.
Yeah, I guess if you're working in town, it wouldn't be anywhere close to that for sure. Another thing, just talking about housing a little bit more, the Kansas Housing Corporation is a resource to find out about housing grants and other tools. They have also resources to address homelessness. That link will be in the slide deck that you can click on as well. For schools, the school buildings and grounds were well maintained. The high school and Sullivan school entrances were very attractive. They felt the playgrounds were adequate for the size of the schools. They felt that during their drive-throughs and looking at facilities that it looked like another locker room was being added at the football field. At the time of their visit, appeared to be some work on structures happening at the high school and the middle school. Some of the buildings had an older appearance, but they felt that work was being done on that. Visitors felt the high school could use a larger sign if they were coming into town to a sporting event or a play or some other event that was being hosted at the high school. For visitors not familiar with the facility or where it is, it was difficult to see that was actually what the building was. And online, they found the district website during a search. They could not determine the quality of education from that specific site, Other sites were also unclear on the quality of education, though some visitors found the UNIV stats information showing about 1,600 students, K through 12, with a 15-to-1 student-teacher ratio. And what the internet is reporting through some of those reports is math proficiency at 15% and reading at 16%. So if the school has different numbers in those areas, that's something that they might want to promote on the website. For childcare, visitors noted they didn't really see facilities or find any information while they were in town about childcare. They did see that some daycares were listed in a Google search, but there was no pricing information to determine what affordability was. So they weren't really sure what kind of childcare there was in town. For the county as a whole, Childcare Aware, which provides some reports for the state of Kansas in the area of childcare needs, they say in the county, the extent that the desired capacity meets potential childcare need is about 22%. And what they do is they figure children 5 and under, they figure the capacity, the license capacity of childcare daycare centers or childcare providers in the community. So for example, a childcare center may be licensed to hold and serve 20 children, but their desired capacity might be 15 because that's how they best operate. So that is the desired capacity. A lot of people, of course, will have family members or friends or someone down the street watch their children while they're at work. So that may not be reported in the attendance numbers in their report. For faith and religion, the community appears to be very faith-based. One restaurant even offered prayer cards to visitors. Several church buildings were observed, especially in the middle of town. They said the properties were really well maintained, so that made it look like the people really cared about the churches, cared about the church's appearance in the community, and that they were really regularly attended. Multiple people noted that the Episcopal Church was up for sale. They liked the architecture of the churches. They thought the Catholic Church had an interesting shape. There was no mention, though, of any faith-based community services associated with the churches. And that's things like a food bank. It's things like a daycare center, clothes closet, community meals, or other events like financial classes. They saw the signs for the services, but they didn't see any evidence of other things happening. And for civic organizations in town, like Rotary and such, they did note that there was various club signage at the entrance of town. Rotary's public space downtown and elsewhere in the community, very prevalent. They loved the Civic Center at the fairground and also noticed that K-State Research and Extension had a building there. Some did not see the American Legion building and others did. They noted buildings for the Masons, the Scouts, and Farm Bureau. Restaurant flyer listed different events put on by various organizations in the city, so that was really useful. Again, we talked about that customer service earlier, so that restaurant's kind of going out of their way to talk about with their customers what there is to do in town. And civic organization activity, other really than the park signs, some of that park equipment and building structure and the signs entering town, multiple visitors noted really no evidence of other civic organization activity. And then some pointed out that the park club sponsored amenities there. For public infrastructure, streets were in decent shape overall. They said good job maintaining those. Signs were easy to read and streets were well marked, according to some visitors. They liked the four-way stops were nicely marked with red and white posts, making them easy to see. They said it would help visitors if there was a sign showing the direction of the fairgrounds and the high school on the eastbound side of the road on Joyce Street. But they did also say Joyce Street was a very nice street with few stop signs and no dips. It was a great way to get to the northern parts of town, great asset to the community. Again, not much in the way of landscaping or beautification projects in town, but they said it's because it's of the dry climate, which should probably accounts for the lack of plants in some areas. It looks like the streetlights downtown were being improved. We mentioned that before. Some felt it was difficult finding City Hall. Others found City Hall but didn't go in. They felt that the building was pleasant enough, but there were barriers around the building at that time, made it seem kind of unfriendly to approach. an implied separation, maybe more of a reflection on the world at large rather than the city itself at the time of the visit there. Some found information about the city in an Experience Grant County magazine at Bear Creek Coffee. And it was noted that the courthouse and other county government buildings were found as well during the visit. We mentioned this in the report because if you're a business or even a homeowner, depending on how close or far you are, or even if the services exist to fire, police, etc., it might affect your insurance rates to some extent. So visitors did find law enforcement 1 block off of Main Street, and fire and EMS has easy and quick access to Highway 160 and the rest of the community. The fire station was very appealing. One visitor noted that they weren't able to really find the fire station or police stations during their visit, but that was not what a majority of people found. The library was off of Main Street too, very close, large building, well-kept structure, good grounds. Kids observed parking their bikes and going inside, so they felt it was very active. They saw the kids were friendly and waved to visitors as they were passing by. Very easy to find, good asset to the community. Speaking of great assets to the community, Fraser Park was mentioned as an amazing complex. The Russ Binney Park was beautiful, real gem. A great outdoor recreation area on the north end of town. The rec center and pool were very nice. Great ballparks are part of that sports complex at the fairgrounds, and the parks had benches, public restrooms, and trash cans, which made their visit all really nice. All right, we're getting close to the end here. So while they were in town, or even while they were doing a search online, did you find that Ulysses was known for an attraction or event? The first thing they said was the home products dinner. Some said they couldn't really tell, but they did mention that the city utilizes the school colors of orange and black throughout town. So it could be well known for the school and the pride that people have in the school district there. It was named after President Grant. Found a Get Ulysses section on the Chamber Tourism Facebook page, so they can find things to do while they were visiting town, and easily found news about the county fair, both online and while they were in person. During some of the visits, noted the county fair was happening, and a restaurant had a weekly fair schedule of events at each table. And those who went to the fair said that the fair looked like it was very well attended. They also found that for another event, there was a poster promoting a date night with the Bear Creek Coffee Shop while they were visiting town. And of some of the things that you experienced and know about now that you visited the community, what significant features have the potential of bringing people to the community as maybe a tourist attraction? So Fraser Park, again mentioned for its camping, fishing, and the trail. The golf course was also mentioned as being nice. Historic museum could be a draw for the curious. And they thought the mural might draw people in to Main Street to look at that a little closer. For visitors or Chamber Center, they did note the Eco Devo and Chamber of Commerce office in one location, and again, the friendly staff and the good signage. Some did feel the Chamber office was not obvious, or that the window display could be reworked to be more inviting. I guess it depends on if you're walking by on the sidewalk, if it's noticeable that that's what the building is. And would anything bring you back as a visitor to town from Goodland, Kansas? Anything that would bring you back or that you would tell other people to come and visit? They said Tiger Nutrition was a neat place to visit. The Civic Center complex was a great complex. They thought they might come back and visit that if there was an event there. Fraser Park for sure. They thought that would be a great place to hold a large event like a family reunion. They felt the Mexican restaurants were very authentic, so the food would bring them back to town. Bear Creek Coffee would bring them back, especially to purchase coffee beans, cups, stickers, and other types of merchandise. And they really did like the food and the service they got at La Estrella, so that is definitely somewhere that they would stop if they were in the area again. Most positive observations, housing is kept up better than most communities and visitors have experienced in the western part of the state. Schools were attractive and people were using the facilities even during the summer months. They felt it was very much like a hometown, a lot of community pride, a true community was one of the quotes. They felt the concrete streets made a real difference, made a lot smoother ride and were easier to upkeep, perhaps. Clean city, great yards, the Fraser Park complex again, the rec center and swimming pool, friendly people, the retail options that existed, and the murals embracing the different cultures and sharing that throughout the community and to people coming in as visitors. The biggest obstacles or challenges, there could be more retail downtown. A lot of what it was experienced, even though there is some retail, was service-based industries, so not really something that people would go in and browse for things or go in for any other reason other than they would need that specific service. While some people said there was a lot of rental housing that they noticed during their visit, others said that they really felt there might have been a lack of rental housing, that they didn't see a lot of signs or couldn't find information online. So it just depends on perspective or when they were visiting, perhaps. If you're coming in from the west, getting to the high school is challenging. Joyce Street, they felt, could be utilized as a major north-south street, giving easier access to the fairgrounds and high school, rather than having to go through the center of town. While there are eating places in town, they felt there wasn't a big variety of eating places. So some felt the city lacked charm in some areas because of the layout being more scattered and needed a more centralized area to have a feel of community. They felt the tightly packed industrial feel made it hard for some to feel like it might be home, but marketing in the community, market that as a place to move, that might be an opportunity. They felt as they were going through the community, it felt like maybe an older community and not so lively in some of the areas. So what are you going to remember 6 months from now? One quote was, "Ulysses left me with a more positive impression than I was expecting." The climate differences between Goodland and Ulysses and how the landscaping is planned with the different grasses instead of trees because of the climate. How clean the community was, the even housing levels across different incomes, the golf course and the nearby park, great family-oriented space. One visitor said they were looking for a little bit more charm. Digital signage as you turn on the Main Street Business District was something that one of the visitors said they were going to remember. People were kind and the retail options were good. They liked Bear Creek Coffee and La Estrella, and they felt it was a community of hard-working people. So just remember that if you're a new looking for a place to live, if you're a new resident, new business owner, or somebody looking for somewhere to stop as a tourist, they're researching online before they come. So use your city and school websites to your advantage to highlight your many assets, what you're proud of, show that to us online, tell your positive stories, and make your residents want to contribute a positive story. So what's next? That's up to you if you'd like to take these results and discuss ways that you might utilize the results, set goals, develop projects, or kind of just keep this if you've already got some things going to refer back to in the future. My contact information is here. If you have any questions post-event, you can also get in touch with Monica and she'll be happy to reach out to me as well. Just some quick resources I'll give you. I mentioned the Kansas Pride program, Kansas Community Empowerment. We're still calling it Kansas Pride right now because we don't have the new website up yet and the new logo, but we've helped over 400 communities across the state with receiving grants, organizing, community assessments, and other educational resources on developing volunteers and attracting volunteers. If you have any needs in the community that you would like an organized group to form and work on addressing those, I believe a Pride group has existed there in the past. There's not a current one at the moment, I don't believe, but that is an opportunity. We have youth community perceptions, which is like first impressions, except for the young people stay in their own community. It's a way for them to bring to the city council or even the county commission or the school district things that they feel are important and get involved in that government process, and maybe even work on writing some grants to address some of the needs that they see in the community. We have grant writing classes. I believe there was one in Dodge City last week, so you might be familiar with these. We do those in person and online. That just kind of gives you some basics on how to write grants and where to find some of those resources and sources of funding. We survey participants of those grant writing workshops 1 year after they've participated, and those who responded to the survey since 2015 have indicated that in their first year after taking the workshop, they've written for $38.1 million of successful grants. I'm number 4 and number 5 on this list. I support the Kansas Pride communities on their search for funding externally, but also, as I mentioned earlier, for any organizations or city projects, I'm happy to work with you one-on-one, free of charge to find any grant sources that might be helpful for what you're trying to do. And I mentioned the First Friday e-calls. We had the link for that with Ben Winchester's information there, connecting small businesses and communities with resources to make those entrepreneurs successful. And we have remote work certification if you're wanting to attract people who have remote work positions. This is a way to get them trained to be effective as those remote workers or remote managers. And finally, if you have any grocery store issues locally, or healthy food access issues, such as farmers markets, the Rural Grocery Initiative and Kansas Healthy Foods Initiative is also part of our community vitality team. And we have resources available there for anything you might need.